Right, folks, welcome back to episode 56 of the HYPEWORKS podcast with myself, Alex,
Jake,
and Fergus Dyer-Smith. Welcome, Fergus.
Hello, welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. We were just talking before the pod, like we've all kind of lived in different places, and you're calling from the UK today. Kind of give us a little bit of background about yourself and kind of what you've done, and just we can kind of start there.
Wow, what have I done? I guess I've been growing companies almost all my life. So, left when I left school, went off to Africa for a bit, came back, went to uni, sort of did the uni thing, and then started a travel company, built a music festival out in the Alps. Following that, ended up in Portugal, spent a number of years, almost a decade in Portugal whilst I was there. Built a company there called Wuxi, a couple of companies in between. I came back to the UK. I've had a brewery. I've worked in VR, but I guess the thread all through of it is it's always been really online businesses, technology-based businesses. Mostly that's sort of where my focus has been. Often in the marketing sector. So there is a thread that runs through a lot of it, even though it all feels a bit random. And now I sort of head up product and AI at a company called MSQ Partners, which is a big global agency group. They acquired my company a few months ago. So that's where I've ended up. Sorry, I just bashed my microphone there, so that's wreck your audio.
Yeah, so you've basically seen a lot of eras of technology, like starting from like desktop web to mobile to where we are today. So how do you think about that in terms of like we always have a joke here, like how long before we're going to mention the word AI, and but
it was about 10 seconds there, wasn't it? Something like that.
Two minutes.
Yeah. 2 minutes was it?
Yeah, just maybe talk a little bit about like how you see trends in technology, because you've obviously seen a few.
Well, it's an interesting question. So I was a biochemist, really, and a geneticist, right, in the early when I went through uni, and that's sort of the track I was on. But at that time, it was really the sort of commercialization or the early birth of the internet, really. So that I remember seeing the internet in those days. You could sit on Yahoo and sort of it would give you like the websites that had arrived that day, sort of thing. But I was just it was like the most exciting thing ever for me, and since then I've sort of stayed in that world mostly, and been involved in other technologies. So whether it's been mobile or I've helped found a company that's in sort of the VR space, crypto. Personally, I've been in that a lot, and all those things have been exciting, but nothing like that original sort of buzz I got when I sort of discovered the internet until I'd say whatever it was 3 and a bit years ago when we got our hands on very early access to GPT. I think it was 2.5, maybe 3, but about 6 months to a year before ChatGPT came along, and that was just that was just a massive sort of wake up. And it was the same. I got the same sense then as I did when I saw the internet, and I hadn't had that with, even though these other sort of, I guess, fluctuations in technology like the birth of mobile and these things are exciting and interesting. They were just sort of, I don't know, variations on a theme in a way in my own head. But this is completely different. This is like, okay, another step change for me. So yeah, you sort of see these new technologies come along and they open up all sorts of opportunity. So Web 1.0, 2.0, mobile, etc. But yeah, this is different, I think.
I've got a question, because there's always that debate online whether this is the easiest or the hardest time to start a business. You've seen all battlefields, battlefronts, all kinds of action. Is it easier or harder today with the change of technology?
Well, that's fascinating, because I guess it depends what you mean by start a business, right? It's never been easier to build a product. especially a digital product, obviously, it's never been easier or cheaper even to sort of get a business off the ground. To build a successful business, though, that's something else. And actually, you've got the opportunity now to create almost anything you can imagine. I mean, I was just chatting to somebody last night about this because partly ADHD as I am, and many people like me are. This is almost like a disaster zone because everything I think I can actually go and create over the course of a weekend, it's just it's just overwhelming to a degree. But you sort of, it misses the probably the hardest part about business building is distribution. Who's going to take your product, competition. These are all other things that now sort of become, playing fields get leveled. So I think it's actually a really interesting question. So we've been, I sort of build little things on the side just to keep my mind active. And one of the filters that sort of use is distribution built in. So has this idea already got a way to get to market? So does it, am I building it for, say, someone who's got an audience online, or is it inherently viral, or is there somebody that has a definitive need and already will pay for it out of the box? Like, you need some filter, because once upon a time the filter used to be, it's going to take me time, effort, money, and cash to get this thing built. Therefore, I need to be much more, what's the word? Mindful of whether I actually go and do this thing or not. Now that's been cut away. That it's now about, well, is it even, is there anything on the other side of this? Because I know I can build it, sort of thing. So I'd say it's probably easier to get started, but probably just as difficult as ever to actually get to any level of scale.
Where do you fall in terms of like market research? Because like as you said, like there's a lot of focus now on distribution. So you've got one crowd of people that will say A/B test everything, gather all the data, all this stuff, and you've got other guys that will just put stuff out there. And you see that online now, people just throwing ideas out there. Where do you sit on either side or in the middle?
I think I would sit on the side of, are you solving a problem, first of all? So have you identified some pain point that somebody else also would recognize as a pain point that's worth solving? And if you do that, then that is market research of one, let's say. So first, best person to ask is yourself. So have you already got a problem yourself that if you solve, the likelihood is, if you're feeling that problem, somebody else is as well. And if you can't find a solution, then it's probably valuable to build it. I've never really done any market research other than for clients. So, through my companies, we've done market research for our clients, but these are typical sort of enterprise type clients where somebody's having to put their neck on the line to go and make a decision and to spend money, and so they need some sort of evidence. But when you're, I guess, more entrepreneurial and you're sort of building things out, you're generally going off some other information point. So that all said, I think the idea that you test your thinking is definitely worthwhile. So, I guess about 10 years ago when the Lean Startup came out, which was like a book written by Eric Ries, that was about that. It was like, what's the minimum viable product that you can put out to test the thesis, see whether there's a market. And if there is, you can then iterate forward from there. And that is, I guess, a form of market research. It's just you're using people, their wallets, and your product in the process of building a business to determine whether there's value there or not. So, I'm not somebody that's... The problem with market research as such is that it doesn't necessarily test. It will give you information about the market. So who are the people? Where are the people? What do the people think? It doesn't necessarily tell you anything about whether they're going to buy your product or service. Best way to test that is to try and sell them it.
Makes sense.
I guess sometimes as well, there's always the iterative process of communicating the fit, right? So it's not, you might be resolving an issue, but whether you can communicate that in a way that people understand and can grasp quickly is also part of that process of trial and error, pitching, testing in the field with clients, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that is positioning is such a crucial part of building a successful business. So you can have exactly the same product and totally different positioning, and either be selling to and be successful with both. By the way, you could sell you could be selling to two different groups of people the same product with different positioning, or equally have different positioning and fail on one and succeed on the other. And you haven't done anything to the product, you've just positioned it differently. I mean, and that's in essence that's the crux of marketing, right? You're sort of, it's about how do you explain to an audience what your product or service is, and you can do that you can do quite a lot just with how you position something. It's interesting as well when you speak to younger, let's say, entrepreneurs or people that are coming at this early, that often gets missed. And that, in fact, when I've helped companies raise money, so I've raised money over the years through VCs and through angels and all the rest. I've done the whole stack numerous times. I often will say to them, look, assume that the person on the other side of this sort of transaction knows absolutely nothing. Even though you think they're an expert, they literally know nothing. You're going to have to explain it like they're 5-year-olds. And that is just another form of positioning. The product hasn't changed. It's just how you deliver the message to said audience.
I guess as well, once you've sold it, there then comes the business model, right? You can sell something, but then the model of how you either maintain that as either a product or a service can change whether that business is then going to be able to scale or be successful, even if the positioning is the same on the front end.
Yeah, I mean, the model is, I guess, how you think about how you bring value to your customers. So you can, services is one way to do it. Obviously, product is another way of doing it. I'm a product person, so I tend to think in terms of product, although I've worked in services businesses, so I understand that as well. And it's a really interesting question today, because those two worlds are starting to merge, and it's a bit grey as to how you differentiate one from the other. The great sort of, service as software is sort of one of these sort of taglines you'll hear with good reason. But the model itself, I guess, doesn't necessarily determine how valuable the thing that you're providing to the customer or the client is. It just determines how successful you are at extracting that value into your business, right? So you can almost deliver the same thing, and the model will can determine to a certain degree the success. But it obviously, model, positioning, they're all important, but fundamentally the biggest one is it a problem worth solving?
I want to pick up on something you said there, Fergus. You said you're a product person. So I'm going to ask an awkward question. So like, product people out there tend to think, make a great product, it sells itself. But I noticed on Wishy's website, you've got some really big corporate clients there. And selling into these corporates is kind of the opposite of that, right? Because you're basically trying to convince them that it's a solution. It's not like the product. So how do you, as a product person, try and sell to big corporates? Because we've got a lot of people in our audience that are probably struggling with this whole thing.
Well, I'm not one of those people that believes product sells itself. And I think and there's a slight nuance here, because I think what you're describing is the sort of, if we build it, they will come type approach, right? Products can sell themselves if you design it into the product. So, maybe there's a viral loop in there, for example, the fax machine, like that has a network effect. It's only really useful if someone else has a fax machine or a phone, the same thing, and it gets more valuable as more people get it. And so that product in of itself sort of starts to sell. Hotmail is the same thing, Gmail, the same thing. But if you sort of think in pure products, like, and what we've had to do, we actually had to build quite a successful sales force. I mean, we were quite a sales-led business. Google has a massive sales team. So, like, you'd think that was the business of all businesses that just didn't need to sell anything, but it's not true. They've got a huge sales force, very successful one. So Salesforce themselves obviously have a Salesforce. So this idea that you can sort of build and people are just going to turn up is you could get lucky, but I think you're going to be 1 in 1,000. It's sort of somehow you need to get this in front of your target market. Now that could be marketing, of course. So sales doesn't necessarily mean what we think of sales is that someone on the phone bashing the phones trying to sell you some double glazing or whatever. Although that's also legit. It can be ads and other mechanisms, but this idea that you just build something and lo and behold people turn up is not one I would lean into.
What channels were like really working for you guys before?
Well, interesting. We went through a few different phases. So when we started, the original product, Wooshie itself, was a 2-sided marketplace for video makers. So it was think of Fiverr for the video industry, and that's what it started off as. And we built this big network of video people that can make video, and we connect people on the other side were sort of small businesses, medium-sized businesses that wanted video assets, and it was completely self-serve, and it was one meet the other. And we just took our cut. And in those days, it was very much driven by PPC. So social hadn't really taken off a huge amount, so there wasn't a huge number of social ad channels yet. But PPC was a big deal. So that drove almost all of it. As time went on and we actually started to win bigger clients, so we went, we got bigger and bigger until the point where we were, big global corporates using it. We transitioned much more into a sales-led organization. And then, like I said, we did a couple of venture rounds. And so we really had to start scaling fast. And so I hired a chief commercial director who came in and he built out, we had SDRs, sort of sales development reps who basically would hit the phones, literally. And then we had a team of BDRs that would convert those leads into, propositions. And then they were going to what we call CSDs who would then turn the actual won deals into accounts. So it was a whole machine. There was a book called that everyone read in the time called Predictable Revenue. There you go. Yeah. And it was sort of, I got to it quite early. And in those days you could get about 13% sort of response rate on cold email. It was cracking. I don't think you could get, 0.13% today, but, yeah, so it was very much driven. So yeah, the channel shifted, and then towards the back end, it became more about content and actually sort of personal branding to a degree. So this sort of thing, and actually now a lot of our leads come through either my activity or activity of other leaders in the business. So yeah, it shifts.
Well, I hope that answered your question, Alex. That is a great book, by the way. The Cold Calling 2.0. I think that everybody should read that. It's really good.
Yeah, like I said, it's probably sitting on my shelf somewhere because I read it years and years and years ago, and it became the sort of Bible for a while until everyone cracked onto it, and then it was
yeah. Aaron Ross, that's the guy. Yeah. I read that on a flight to San Francisco.
Yeah. I think he was at Salesforce originally, wasn't he? He was one of the guys there that sort of originally grew that.
Yeah, his whole theme was cold calling 2.0 to break up the sales process into effectively like 3 stages, so that if somebody quit, it would be easy to replace that person instead of doing the whole pipeline. Yeah. Okay, I've got another question, but I think we touched on a few points there. That the distribution model also fluctuates in the age. I think the massive one that people are really trying to exploit now is AI search, okay? Because everybody's like searching on AI. Have you considered this approach with your with your former company that you were going? Was that something that you explored?
It wasn't, because it wasn't really a thing, but it is now. So obviously the company that I'm now in, which is the company that acquired us, is essentially a marketing services business. 2,000 people around the world, and so they're serving a lot of clients, and clearly this is GEO or AEO, whatever you want to call it. It sort of comes up, and it's certainly something that's sort of in front of me now, starting to think about, okay, how are people going to discover and find new things? At the moment, I'm not sitting on the fence on it. I'm just sort of watching with intrigue, really, because I do wonder whether we're at a mid phase at the moment, and that actually that we're not at the final point. So what I mean by that is, the moment the way people are thinking about this is, okay, people are going to use LLMs in the same way they use Google. So they go off, they're looking for a product or something, and it pops up in the response, or they're looking at something else and something pops up in the response in the same way Google search would pop up blue links when you were searching for something that might not be necessarily relevant. But my larger thought on this is what happens when it's not the human that's looking, and that's more interesting, I think, because we're going to have a point, and it's probably not far off, where you'll have agents that will act on your behalf to do various things. So let's say you're booking a hotel, for example. I always think that's a reasonable one to go to. It knows the sort of hotel you want, the sort of room that you want, the sort of price you're prepared to pay, where, and you'll just be able to say, hey, look, I need to go to London next week. Can you book me a room? And it'll go off and just do it. And at that point, you're no longer searching. So you're not going to be the thing that we need to influence. The agent's going to be the thing we need to influence. That, I think, is really interesting. And I think the people who are thinking about that now are going to get somewhat ahead of the game, because I think that's an inevitability. So that's the bit of the geo, whatever you want to call it, that I think is interesting. Now, it may be the same. It may mean the same thing. So it may just mean that you need to influence how an LLM surfaces who you are and what you are. But yeah, that's I think the more interesting question.
And we also, just to step back for a moment there, we talked about the decline of email. This is something that comes up a little bit. We have lead generation agencies occasionally on the show. So we always talk about the amount of noise. I mean, you must know the product instantly, or a derivative or variant of it, right? The email marketing now, there's tons and tons of different email software. So the volume of emails that just hit your inbox is so big that it creates a lot of noise. So it's very difficult to stand out on email marketing campaigns these days. So do you think that the noise on the channels has also increased, and that might make it harder to be able to be discovered, even if you have an amazing solution to somebody's problem?
Yes and no. So email still works, though, right? So cold email still can drive a volume. Now, it's not the same percentage that it was when we started doing it, but there is still a percentage. So I think at our peak, we were probably sending maybe a few thousand emails a day, and at 13%. Or whatever it was something around that number sort of response. That's pretty good, right? You were getting a lot of responses in the day. We had a whole bank of SDRs to deal with that. At 0.13 or 0.01%, okay, well, let's just up the number we're sending every day. Let's do 1 million a day. That's sort of what's happened. And so that's why you get this massive volume. Will it eventually trend towards zero? I don't know. I mean, we actually still do drive some leads through cold outreach. But we tend to combine things now. So we've also got content, we've got social, we've got events, we've got it's a big mix. The noise, I think, where it gets more. So with email, and the other thing with email, of course, is that we've had spam since emails almost began. So everyone's sort of used to dealing with it. I think where it gets more interesting is in the content space, because now what you're getting is lovingly termed sort of slop, right? AI slop, which again I think is a bit of is missing the target a little bit, because it's what it does. At the moment, it feels like AI slop because you can determine that what you're looking at is AI generated. But if it had been, I don't know, a human delivering the same storyline, you wouldn't call it AI slop. You just call it crap content, right? And you just wouldn't engage with it. Once you can't determine between the two, you just fall back to, okay, well, where is good content that I'm going to go and engage with? Is there a personality behind it? Now, that personality may be AI generated, but is there a personality, a story, a theme, something that I buy into, subject matter, whatever it happens to be? I think that stuff just all stands true. And you just end up having to maybe fight slightly harder for your little piece of the 24 hours of attention that you can capture. But it is a zero-sum game. You know, everyone only has a finite amount of it. So I think it gets harder, but we are humans in the sense that, you know, we'll find ways to filter toward what we did. If you'd asked the same question maybe 10 years ago, or say before YouTube, and in those days it would have been, oh, there's 180 cable channels. How do you possibly know what to watch, right? And then she said, well, what if there was 1 million channels? They'd be like, well, that's impossible. Like, there's no way there's no way we'll ever be able to, like, that's just ridiculous. Well, we've got that, right? So somehow we've managed to find a way to filter down to what it is that we want to watch. So I suspect, whilst there's a technological way to create the stuff, there'll be technological ways to filter toward what you want. And as a marketer, you're just going to have to think about, how do I get in front of
you mentioned AI slop, Fergus. It'd be rude not to talk about video, given your company's focus on video. I was watching a pod earlier today, very large tech YouTuber, and the guy was asked, do you think AI avatars will replace human YouTubers? And his response was no, because humans still want to watch humans. Do you think that kind of rings true?
I think, again, it's like a middle of the road answer, but I think it's partially true. So, you know, I definitely do not want to go and watch robots playing football, right? I want to watch humans playing football. You know, like sport. There's certain things that just doesn't make any sense. Like, what's the point? Like, you know, but if what I want to watch is someone delivering maybe the news summary, or I need a how-to video on just how to fix my gutter.
Keir Starmer and a robot, maybe not much difference. Let's be honest.
If I want the budget delivered to me, perhaps, you know, like it's horse of course. It's like sort of there'll be certain circumstances where you just won't care. It just won't matter, because it's not about necessarily the delivery mechanism. However, if I want to go and watch something that I know that because there's a personality behind it that I've sort of really. We were just talking about the whole Rory Stewart's podcast with I've forgotten the other
Alistair Campbell.
Alistair Campbell, right?
Yeah.
The reason why you sort of watch that, or people watch that, is because there's an element of personality in there, and you know, we all know those two characters from the times during politics. You know, so there's that element to that, and you're not going to be able to replace that with AI.
As a business, does it give you more leverage though? Because, you know, as you say, like, you used to have like crews of people and physical creators making video content. Suddenly you can 10, 100, 1,000x that if you have AI. So does it maybe make it even better for you, like in that business in video? Or worse?
Better or worse? It's a good question. I don't know whether it does either. I think all it's really doing is it's another tool for you to be able to deliver whatever story that you want to go and deliver. If the story is boring, then it's still boring whether you deliver it. It doesn't matter what you deliver it through, right? If no one cares, then. So when we used to do in the early days of YouTube, when a lot of our clients would come to us and sort of say, oh, you know, we want to build out a YouTube channel, the fights we would have to try and tell them, look, no one cares about the ex-client YouTube channel, right? What they care about is their haircut, or you know, does their breath smell, right, or whatever. Like that's the human piece of this. So create the channel that's no one cares about your company necessarily, or even your products for that matter. There's very few companies, maybe like Apple or whatever, where you do care, but they're very few. But they care about this problem or finding other people in this community. So create a channel about that, own that channel, and then you've got the opportunity to present your product at various times. They would never do it. It was just such an uphill. Very few brands, I would say, got it right. GE got it right. You know, Intel got it right. There's a few brands that got it right, but very few. So many just went down there. Here's our corporate dumping ground for corporate videos, and it's just like a yawn fest, right?
So actually, you're saying like technology is a tool, and unless you have the right strategy, then it doesn't matter kind of what you do.
Absolutely. If you've got to have a story to tell, and technology will enable you to tell it to many, many people. But if it's a boring story, you're just telling boring story to many, many people. It's like you're just amplifying the boredom.
Do you think like AI can be creative? Like as in, 'cause,
Yes.
yeah, we were
Yeah,
talking about this as well.
I'm not one of these people that falls into the camp that AI will not be able to be creative. I think it will do it differently. I don't think it'll necessarily do it in the way that human beings do it. But that's not to say that it won't be able to do it, right? I don't think. So I work in an agency group where there's a lot of creative agencies, right? So they'll probably shoot me for saying this, but the process of creativity, I don't think is necessarily just a human thing that cannot be replicated. I don't think it can do it to a great degree right now, but you can get it to start helping you. So, good example I always use is, a lot of good ideas are just mixes of, everything's a remix, right? That's the sort of the line. AI is brilliant at helping you bring two completely unrelated things together. So you can say, I've got this campaign for toothpaste. Help me connect, the FA Cup final with my new rotating toothbrush. And somehow AI will go, well, here's 5 ways you could do that and create a fashion and an ad. And you'll be like, holy smokes, like that is just, Now humans will get to the same place because they'll just take a lot longer. Where the human comes in, I think in particular, is just knowing what good looks like. And that is a very human thing. So that's where you do still need the creative agencies and the creative folks, because taste and sort of, judgment, these are human things, because they can only be based on your inherent sense of what good is. And AI doesn't have that because it hasn't experienced life, right? It hasn't wept. It doesn't know pain. It doesn't know what humor is really. It knows the construct of humor, but can't feel it. So that's where the human comes in. So the human will be able to look at the million ideas that the AI spat out and go, there's something in that connects with us as human beings. It may need a twist. Now, like I said, I don't think AI is quite there yet anyway, but let's give it another year and it probably will be. It'll still need the human on top of it to sort of be able to determine what actually should be put out into the world. That's my view anyway. Many would disagree.
Alex, is it the time?
Yeah, go for it.
Brace yourself, Fergus. This is the final question of the show, but it always gets people stumped. They take a while to answer, and it blows their mind. And it's our gambit that we do every show. So brace yourself. It's the final question. Here it comes. Okay. Future predictions. What are they? It could be anything. It could be about your life, work, the future, industry, technology, just future predictions.
Well, I'll give you one in the AI space that I think I would be watching really closely. One is world models. So they're starting to appear now. You can't really get access to them yet, but if you go and look at like Gamma, which is a Google one, and there's another one coming out of I can't remember the name of her company now. These are sort of representations of worlds that look like game engines. They're not game engines. So when you look at them, it's sort of like, people running around these worlds. But the ramifications of some of that are enormous, because all of a sudden we now have training environments that we can bring to AI, and they can start to understand the real world physics, how you move around that. And the knock-on effects of that are things of, they do start to get an understanding of how we exist. So really, a human experience, human consciousness isn't just our understanding of language, it's understanding of the physical world, right? And that this starts to open that up. I think the ramifications are so big, I can't even think of what they all are, but I can see that these could be absolutely game-changing things. And I think 2026, especially, we might start to see some of that coming down the loop. The models are all going to get bigger and better. Some people talk about, all maths being sold, all physics being sold in the next 12 to 18 months, whatever that means, but it sounds enormous. So I think the next year and a half are going to be increasingly mind-blowing, if they haven't already blown your mind already. So that's what I predict with that. It personally, for me, I think that the bit that I'm most interested in is how product evolves, because I work within product. I think companies are going to completely change. very interested in a lot of these businesses that are being built by one or two people. I think the power of the individual working with a group of agents, I think, could completely change the way we think of work and careers and all these sort of things that I was brought up to believe. Entrepreneurship, I think, will become a much more persistent or even common thing, because it'll be the only way. Of course, some might argue that 4 or 5 years' time you won't need to work because there'll be a world of abundance. And anyway, wouldn't that be great? But in the absence of that, people are going to have to find new paths. So, but I think that's all going to start having an impact over the course of the next 18 months. They would be the things I'd be watching. I'll be watching what's happening to employment rates. Are they starting to drop? And what's happening with are there completely new paradigms of models that start to shift things? That'd be the thing. And I don't think either of those are depressing, by the way. I think I know they sound negative, but I don't think they are. I think that they're good signs, really.
Yeah.
Leave you with that one.
Let's check back in. Let's check back in end of 2026 and see if that's true.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably will be.
Okay.
All right. That was cool, guys. As I said, let's check back in, and all the best with
and you
next
guys.
year, Fergus. Yeah. Good to talk.
Enjoy being out there. All right. Cheers.
Take care. See you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.